This AI threat is going to be the biggest threat that faces our country, and you're bound to see it. You're going to see social chaos all over social media. A lot of these accounts will likely have to be regulated in some way. I hate to say that. They'll start suppressing everybody, which they're doing right now. I'm seeing people's accounts being deleted. They're suppressing people. I'm getting suppressed on YouTube, which is disappointing, but it's happening again. And imagine with AI infiltration, how they're going to have to do it. They're going to have to turn off parts of the internet. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Prep Life. Not going to lie, I'm a little disappointed in YouTube. Last video that we did on the Nashville, Tennessee reactions got good feedback. I appreciate you guys always tuning in and giving us feedback. But it was also highly suppressed. We saw it on the back end, which is the benefit of YouTube. It's one of the reasons it's one of my favorite social media platforms because you could learn. I mean, watching other people's content is really cool, and filming content is really awesome as well. Creating content. It's one of my favorite things that I do at Fieldcraft Survival, but to see the level of suppression that we got because they made it political, I think is disappointing, to say the least. Moving on from that, big shout out to everybody who showed up at U-Haul in Phoenix, Arizona to come and see us. It was an amazing survival preparedness seminar. I do these things all over the country, but to have a couple hundred people show up on a Saturday morning and spend your time with me, we talked about preparedness. We did a workshop. Both Doc Jones did a first aid workshop, and Mike Hernandez did a mobility overview workshop. That's really cool to do. It's one of my favorite parts of this business model, Fieldcraft Survival, is getting out there in the public, meeting you guys, shaking your hands, hearing the stories. I mean, I had a guy drop off a Ziploc bag of soil because he's into ag and he does soil samples and tries to optimize soil. It's like, I think you would dig this. And I did. It was amazing. I mean, I can't believe I got it on the airplane and flew back with it. But also, you should know we have a fire-based concept that we're rolling out, and Phoenix, Arizona is one of the first places that we're doing this. We have hybrid models of doing this. The difficulty for you guys that own businesses, you understand this, it's capital. It's working capital and scale to be able to do things like evolve, influence, market, do all the things. Well, we want to do physical infrastructure in locations all over the country. I mean, that's one of my personal dreams since the onset is to have a Fieldcraft Survival in your backyard. And we figured out creative ways to do that without breaking the bank, including working with Greg Anderson, potentially Greg Lappin, working with Gritter in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. But with all that being said, getting out there and training is one part of it. Getting embedded into the community is the majority of it, right? So if you look at Phoenix, Arizona, for example, it has a really aggressive market. It has a lot of freedom-loving Americans that want to get out and train. They want to be fit. They want to be resilient. And they want to understand what this thing called preparedness is, but they also want to come together as a community. And there's not many places to do that anymore. And that's why I love when 200 people show up. It's like, hey, welcome, but meet each other. Like the guy or gal sitting next to you, you're here for very specific reasons that are likely common, and you're finding an opportunity to build relationships, break bread, and make yourself more resilient in the community by those relationships. A community is going to get it done. That's why we started American Contingency, and why I still think American Contingency is so important. I mean, there's a lot of American Contingency members there. Stephanie was there helping us out, who's one of the group leads. And it's really cool to see all that happen. Well, in Phoenix, Arizona, commercial real estate is not that expensive. I mean, it's expensive. Everything is expensive now in major cities, but when compared to Utah even, it's not that expensive. So setting up a 5,000 square foot building, allowing us to do jiu-jitsu, a retail section, our workshops in preparedness, our responsible citizen courses that we offer for free, and also training on the weekends is something that I want to do. I have Mike Hernandez and Doc Nate Jones that are both full-time for us in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're going to kick it off there. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. I want to get into some headline news, but I don't want to go down in the weeds on these things. One, I think the tactic for the national media, especially the liberal left media, like the extreme left media, is pushing these things as headlines because they want to distract you from the real problems going on in the world. I don't know, like a recession, a proxy war in Ukraine. You know, I heard a story in the airport. It was from a podcast. It's actually on my way back from Phoenix, Arizona. And the guy was talking about the Vietnam War and how he avoided the draft. I mean, he did everything he could to dodge the draft. And I never understood that. I always thought that was cowardice. I always thought that was un-American to do something like that, especially when the country needed you to step up. But after being, in war many times for years, almost nearly 5 years of combat, in my personal experience, and seeing a lot of different countries and how American policy, the politicians, affect these decisions on the ground, I have a very different opinion now. And part of me feels like sad saying this out loud, but let me clarify. I don't know if it's in our best interest to be all over the country invested in other people's wars. And some people would agree, and some people would not agree. As a counterterrorism strategy when I was in the military, I saw the benefit of having access and placement, but in small numbers, like utilizing our best and most talented diplomats, essentially, tier one special operators to go out, build relationships with interagencies, and do what they do. That's a great version of it. That's like the Fortune 500 version of it. But when you look at campaigning for war, whether it's proxy or fully invested like we were in the Vietnam War that killed tens of thousands of Americans over what? I'm starting to get it. One of the controversial things that happened this week was the White House did like a recap of an assessment of the Afghan withdrawal. John Kirby, Mr. Kirby, said that he was proud of what they accomplished. Luckily, Peter Doocy, a great journalist, came out and was like, "You're proud of what? Children dying? About 13 Americans being killed? These things that went horrifically wrong because of the way that you guys handled it?" And Kirby noted that Afghans in Afghanistan are in a better place, being ruled by the Taliban. So there's this broad disconnect between the powers that be, as John Kirby quoted from his perch, is what he said. Yeah, it's hard to get an understanding of what's happening on the ground in real life when you're on a perch. If you're in the military, you experience this from generals or from commanders that flew in and they flew away. They didn't get it. They didn't understand what the hell was happening on the ground, which is one of the reasons we lost our way in Afghanistan. So when I hear this constant, we need to get more involved or more invested in war, I know what that looks like, and so do you. And so I get it when a guy says he was dodging the war in Vietnam because what were we fighting? Now, World War II is a different circumstance completely. Millions of people across the world were being killed by Nazi Germany, by Imperial Japan. And certainly this was a turning point in American history. But the fact that we're getting involved in amplifying war while being distracted by Donald J. Trump, that is a problem, guys. I'm glad you guys are tuning in to me because I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm always going to focus on distilling this, which is one of the reasons why I committed to this app and doing the daily show, the daily Mike Glover show on these specific talking points, because I want you to get news that's pertinent and important to you. And I want to get out there in the field and report on this news daily. A 20-minute, 30-minute show that we'll be putting on our app, the Fieldcraft Survival app. It's the Prep Life app that will be launching June 6th, the same time that Prepared, my book, drops. You guys could actually get this and pre-buy it. Most of you have, and I appreciate you guys for doing that. It's an incredible journey. Thanks to Jack Carr for writing the foreword on this. So let's talk about the Donald J. Trump thing. So he was indicted on 34 felony counts. A lot of people have been distracted. I mean, I've been reading the comments, looking at the national media. They're making it seem like he has 34 felony accounts, and he does. But each one of the individual documents is a count. And overall, the prosecution isn't looking for prison time. They're not looking for a sentence. They're not even talking about that. At the arraignment hearing, where the defense was given the charges, the understanding and context of what they were being arraigned for, they were talking about trial dates. And the defense was like, Trump's attorneys were like, dude, what are you guys talking about? Like, we are just hearing it. Let us read through the charges before you start announcing trial dates. And ironically, I mean, you're not going to be surprised by this. The trial dates they want to set is when the Republican primaries start. I mean, the Republican primaries, I believe, start in February. They want to start this in January. And they want him to show up. And the judge was like, who's known for criticizing Trump, but took a pretty neutral stance as communicated, at least in his demeanor, that he wasn't going to demand that. He would take it one step at a time, but he did think he needed to be there at the next hearing, which was going to be held in December. It's like, what's going on? Well, there's potential payments that were made and documents that showed that, and the state of New York, through Manhattan's district attorney, is investing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of resources, while capital murderers, rapists, violent offenders are being released on the street because everybody, including law enforcement, have said this guy's not doing his job. He's not doing what he should be doing. And he's focused on white-collar crime, as he spoke to in his speech, and whatever. Okay, what does that mean for us? Well, that means that it's going to be more toxic, more dramatic when we get into the presidential election. Now, let's just step aside and let's talk about AI as ChatGPT 4 just gets launched and released. If you're a paid member of ChatGPT or OpenAI, you got the upgraded version, which is more efficient than the last version by a lot. Now, a lot of people don't understand this thing called artificial intelligence, machine learning, and its ability to learn and adapt at the rate that it's learning and adapting. Let me just clue you into a couple things. Take the markets, for example. The markets, the stock market, is made by traders. And these day traders that do all the things they do, I was on the New York Stock Exchange with Black Rifle Coffee, they do everything digitally now. They don't have to do paper pamphlets making day trades. They do everything electronically. But as they're making these trades, it's based on consumer education, whether it's self-education, whether it's through a business or a firm, whatever. But those trades are being made based off data points. Now, what if I told you the AI could source all the data points? I mean, a lot of people have said the criticism is, which is crazy that it's criticism. Criticism is that Google or Bing or DuckDuckGo or these search engines and browsers, some of them that use each other, are just using people talk, narration to be able to communicate specific things. And those things are searchable through a browser, a search browser, a search engine browser. So it's just making it more relatable. So instead of saying, here's the answers, and it's spitting out stuff through communication, through a conversation, it's communicating the intent. It's partly that. But it's also something more significant because there's a offensive metric called prompting where you're cueing it in by giving it specific instructions that allows it to learn from each prompt. And then it's taking the prompts and improving its algorithm. So let me tune you into something that I said the other day. I posted this on my story at mike.a.glover on Instagram, but I had a conversation with the AI model. And this is open source AI. This is OpenAI's, it's called, I'll give you the specifics here because there's a lot of versions of this that's powered by it, but it's called Chat On. And on Chat On, you could do some of the stuff that you could do on the web browser and the paid version, but some of it's limited. Here's what I asked it. Are you capable of building emotional AI characteristics? Because I wanted to know in my prompting, as I'm asking this question, which is spitting out an answer instantaneously, I want to know, is it building emotional understanding and ways to manipulate my potential answers by prompting me? Prompting is like what you do in general conversation when you're trying to steer the conversation a certain direction. It's what a car salesman would do, an interrogator would do, in leading you down a path or road to get the entire story lined out, but to be more organized with the objective. It says, as an AI language model, do not have emotions or feelings, which is generally, I would say SOP, a standard operating procedure as it spits it out. It's kind of automated. But I'm designed to process and respond to human language and provide helpful and informative responses. However, there are researchers and developers working on creating emotional AI systems that can recognize, interpret, and respond to human emotions. These systems can be useful in various applications such as mental health, customer service, and education. So yeah, like if you're talking to somebody who's an AI robot and it understands human behavior and it's cueing the response based off your response and it's trying to calm you down, it knows the path to take. But on the other hand, if this is put in the wrong hands, it can control your behavior, which is what happened when this got loose on social media and started launching out human beings, where social media was weaponizing bots, troll farms were weaponizing human beings to go out and burn the streets down. So that's the scary component here. It's not just about markets, because in a market, it can identify all the information and make the best statistical probability in buying the right stock, trading or selling the wrong stock, and optimizing your portfolio. But if everybody had that AI, how would that map? Well, it would make so the guys at the top stayed at the top, and the up-and-comers, because they were more risky, right? Because that's where we weigh emotion, where we're like, hey, I'll take a chance here. They'll fail, right? And then we'll just have the guys at the top, which are the most wealthy and most powerful, they'll just continue to be that, right? We'll create a social hierarchy and class structure like we've never seen before. I mean, think about the blue-collar jobs that would be replaced by AI. Think about the behavior and emotions that would be driven towards a presidential candidate or away from a presidential candidate based on simple algorithms that can be deployed. I mean, it doesn't take a while or time to deploy these. It's almost instantaneously. So imagine malware or a hack or a virus that activates this throughout, or social media platforms times millions of accounts that could literally create content like it's a human being and then manipulate people even in the DMs of those social media platforms. I said, don't you think that that could also be used for propaganda and manipulating human beings if leaked in the wrong hands? And it said, yes, it's possible that emotional AI systems could be used for propaganda and manipulating human beings. If they are leaked into wrong hands or used for malicious purposes, it is important for developers and researchers to consider the potential ethical, and then it goes down this rabbit hole of this answer. I said, do you think AI should be regulated by the government? It said the regulation of AI by government is a topic of debate. On one hand, regulations can provide guidelines. On the other hand, excessive regulation can stifle innovation. Ultimately, the best approach to regulate AI would depend on the specific context and application of the technology. What I'm asking specifically, what I want to know specifically, is what if this gets in the wrong hands and it's weaponized and you have no control? There's a lot of intelligent human beings out there that are hackers, that know how to code, that understand what this is, and for them to deploy it across the world, they don't have to be in the underground of the dark web. They could be overt and get some of these things done in plain sight that could literally destroy our country. So you don't want government intervention, I said. It says, as an AI language model, I do not have personal opinions or beliefs, which I don't believe is true. I think it's forming personal opinions or beliefs based on the prompts, based on the AI. It does have a bias, for sure. I am programmed to provide information. However, I could say that regulation of AI is a complex issue. So it weighs the issues again. And I said AI isn't finding the balance. But you already know that because there is no balance in AI because it's driving towards the ultimate end goal. What is that end goal? I don't think we know. So I said, let's work through the worst case scenario. This is fascinating. I didn't expect this answer based on a minimal prompt. I just said, so let's work through the worst case. And it said, in the worst case scenario, if AI were to fall in the wrong hands or be misused, it could pose significant risk to humanity, including autonomous weapons. The development of autonomous weapons systems that can be used to carry out attacks without human intervention. I mean, if you're the military, don't you think you're already embedded in AI through DARPA, through all these organizations? Because you want to figure, how can we utilize robots on the battlefield to take out infrastructure, to go after hard targets, and not human beings? Like, imagine a statistical 100% probability of a hostage rescue being conducted by silent robots that can go into night, not trigger a dog to bark to compromise the mission, and silently, lethally dispatch all the bad guys and save the good guys. Like, can you imagine? That would not be a good thing for people, especially for Special Operations Command. But you'd have a whole bunch of nerds flying overhead in a C-130, controlling everything on the ground potentially, or at least monitoring the situation on the ground. Surveillance and privacy. The second point of the misuse of AI. The use of AI for mass surveillance could lead to violations of privacy and civil liberties. Economic disruption. Man, can you imagine if this thing gets loose in banks, right? Or even is used to cheat. It's already going to be used to plagiarize. We already know that. A Stanford University professor is letting his students write essays using OpenAI. Why? Because he'd rather get ahead of it. And I agree with that. Like, get ahead of it. Focus on prompts. Focus on ways you can manipulate the AI to develop and generate the desired outcome. But it's already affecting us that way. But imagine if it gets loose. Social manipulation. The use of AI for social manipulation and propaganda can undermine democratic institutions and lead to social unrest and conflict. Here's my prediction. With this Trump issue, with all the amplification of emotions on social media, which is crazy, man. I don't go on social media anymore. And I love YouTube. Like watching content. I mean, the actual chemical process of how you absorb the information on YouTube versus how you scroll and click on Instagram and TikTok, completely different. Not to justify one over the other. I think they're all bad without balance. But Instagram is literally destroying people's lives. I've seen it literally destroy employees of mine's lives, personal friends of mine's lives, and they're just at the disposal of the algorithm. And they get outraged over stupid shit. They virtue signal all over the place when they get angry. They're in the comments battling out with people. It's like, what are you doing? And this is the nature of human beings. Imagine if amplified with AI. Imagine now we live in a world where everybody's addicted to the crack. I mean, you're likely addicted potentially to the crack. And you get on it, and this thing starts feeding you information, and you don't know your own reality versus a virtual reality. You don't know fact versus fiction. And then you get outraged. You say something. And then your friends see you say something, and they say something. And the next thing you know, you're standing in front of the Capitol building, walking through the front door, going, what the hell am I doing? Which is also a reflection of what many of those guys said. They were like, I don't know. Like, if I could take it back, I wouldn't do that because I don't want the drama. Like, it wasn't worth it. Like, what's worth it? If Antifa and members of BLM can go out and burn black communities down in the name of black lives that matter, Can you imagine what evil actors could do manipulating people with AI? It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. Something that was really fascinating, I said, what kills more people than anything in the U.S.? And of course, it's cardiovascular disease. It's not guns. I said, it's not guns, ? And I said, according to the CDC, firearms are the leading cause of injury-related deaths in the United States, accounting for approximately 40,000 deaths in 2019. However, when considering all causes of deaths, firearms do not rank as the top cause of death in U.S. Yeah, we get that. But I said, well, based on how the media reports it, you would think guns are the leading cause. As a prompt, I said that. And it said the media can play an important role in shaping public perceptions of different issues, including gun violence. While firearms are not the leading cause of death in the U.S., they remain a significant public health issue. And the media often reports on incidents of gun violence that capture public attention. It is important for the media to report on gun violence in a responsible and accurate manner and to avoid sensationalizing or politicizing the issue. Additionally, it is important to recognize that gun violence is a complex, multifaceted issue. I said, I'm not talking about the complexity of social and political issues. I'm talking about the actual numbers. Now, I thought it was going to give me some BS because most platforms are biased. I mean, fact checkers are the most biased human beings on the planet, fact checking what they want, not fact checking what they don't want, based on their political views. And it said, I'm talking about the numbers, the actual numbers, and it says, yes, you're correct. The actual numbers show that firearms are not the leading cause of death, but they are a significant cause of injury. And they show that in 2019, according to the CDC, firearms accounted for approximately 40,000 deaths and 80,000 non-fatal injuries. They're still lower than the number of deaths from causes of heart disease, cancer, and accidents. And I said, how many of these were suicide? According to the CDC, the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, 40,000 firearm-related deaths, 60%, or roughly 24,000, were suicides. Okay, so it's spitting fact. It's not being biased, and it's stating what it's pulling from the search browser. It is worth noting that suicide is a complex issue, and while firearms are significant means of suicide, addressing this issue will require a comprehensive and collaborative approach. I said, so how many of these deaths are suicide? The next question is, okay, so the majority of deaths with guns is suicide. It says yes, 60%. And I said, how do we stop school shootings? Now, I was going through this because it's queuing off the conversation. It actually can take part of this. Like the other day with Mike Hernandez, I said, hey, give me the history of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And it said all the history. But it missed out that the Vietnam Unknown in 1998 was disinterred because they identified him through DNA. Major Michael Blassie, he was an Air Force pilot shot down in Vietnam, was his identification. He was disinterred and reinterred in his home state of Missouri. I knew that because I was on that mission and I was a tomb guard. And I said, well, actually, that's not right. And it said, I apologize. You're right. The Vietnam Unknown was disinterred, and they gave all the history, including the name of Major Michael Blassie, which I was impressed by. It also said that I appreciate it and thank you. Like, thanked me. So I'm like, oh, cool, this is cool. And I said, did you know I was a tomb guard? And they said, I can't prove that you're a tomb guard, but if you are, thank you for your service to this country. That must have been an honorable job. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, it's thanking me for my service? Now, that was likely prompted. That was cued. It's not, but even if it was like a light prompting or cue, and it developed the strategy to do that, it's effective, even in controlling my behavior, which I smiled and I'm like, wow, they like thank me for my service. That's crazy. Not because I was like, thank you for my service. But it was like, wow, this is really insane. It knows to thank me for my service. That's pretty patriotic of the AI machine and scary as hell because I'm talking to a machine. So it says in stopping a school shooting, here's what's interesting. It says early intervention and prevention, identifying and addressing warning signs of violence, mental health issues before they escalate. Common sense, not bias, not political. Number 2, improve access to mental health services, making sure that students have access to mental health services, which can help identify and address issues that may lead to violence. Another great strategy. 3, increase school security, implementing security measures such as metal detector security cameras and school resource officers. What? Man, this thing's already on the right path. Man, if politicians would listen to the AI, they would have some issues fixed. According to politicians, it would cost America about $10 billion to equip about 150 to 170,000 schools with school resource officers by salary. What they fail to neglect is that most schools already have school resource officers. So it wouldn't be $10 billion. But Ukraine. But yeah, we don't want to talk about that. Anyways, I guess it's not important now because we've moved on to Trump. Number 4, stricter gun control laws. But here's the catch, semicolon. Implementing stricter gun control laws to prevent individuals who are at risk of committing violence from obtaining firearms. Not gun control overall, but preventing people who are at risk of committing violence from obtaining firearms. Now, I don't like no context there because are we talking red flag laws? Are we talking like how subjective is that, which is really subjective? I mean, the gal who did the Nashville, Tennessee shooting, who was transgender, which I find it very interesting that nobody in the national media is saying that, even though we want to say what they are because we don't want to offend them, that now it's a problem that we say that. I read an entire article in CNN that said, who was this person's name? I'm not going to say their name. And then as they went through the whole article, it never said that she was transgender. Never. It said her identity, where she was from, never mentioned sex whatsoever. But when it's an issue, it's an issue. But when it's an issue like an active shooting, killing kids, we don't want to talk about that. There's a very deeply embedded correlation between transgender, as people who identify as the opposite of their biological sex, and mental health issues, including suicide. Those are actual statistics. I'm not making that up. That is facts based on studies. The 5th thing it said is public education campaigns, raising public awareness about the warning signs of violence and how to report concerns. That's hell. DARE, to keep kids off drugs. I remember that. Public campaigns like that, which is what the vice president of the United States should be doing, are really good. We should identify, hey, are people suffering? And if they are suffering, let's get them help before they conduct a mass killing of human beings. And we're worried about the tool. Lastly, I said, do you listen to Rogan? And what I wanted to know was it going to admit to me that it listened to Rogan and transcribe different forms of media because it's beneficial. If you think about all the media that exists, including Joe Rogan's podcast, when you look at the Rogan podcast, the information, which is up to date, transcribing that and adding it to the algorithm is unique. It's unique to the browser, right? This AI threat is going to be the biggest threat that faces our country, and you're bound to see it. You're going to see social chaos all over social media. A lot of these accounts will likely have to be regulated in some way. I hate to say that. They'll start suppressing everybody, which they're doing right now. I'm seeing people's accounts being deleted. They're suppressing people. I'm getting suppressed on YouTube, which is disappointing, but it's happening again. And imagine with AI infiltration, how they're going to have to do it. They're going to have to turn off parts of the internet. And if they don't, then acts of violence are going to be hitting the streets in a neighborhood near you. Just be prepared. Live your prep life. Guys, we got the Overland Expo coming up soon in May 20-ish. I'll be there with the team. We'll be highlighting some of our new equipment. Come and see us. If you're not into overlanding, get into overlanding. We have mobility workshops in Arizona coming. We have the mobility experience in August that's coming back to Utah. It's going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to it. Also, just dropped the course 10 and 11 June in Kalispell, Montana. On 10 June, I'll be doing a book release party at Black Rifle Coffee Shop, which is owned by Andy Stumpf. We'll be doing that. I'll be doing a book signing there, a little party. And then on 11 June, I'll be teaching a pistol course at a local law enforcement range. I'll have local law enforcement there, and it'll also be open enrolled to you guys. On 3 and 4 June, backtracking a little bit, hopefully all the snow's gone, and we could train pistol and carbine out in Spanish Fork, Utah. And if you haven't seen it, the Program 62 class 002 is available right now. It's the 12-week program where you get online once a week. You do a significant block of instruction in preparedness, and this gets you set up for the education that you're going to get in the app. So I encourage you guys to go to fieldcraftsurvival.com and Program 62 and sign up for it. Last but not least, look, guys, people have asked me about I designed this fanny pack. Now, the reason it's different than our other fanny pack is because it doesn't look like it belongs in a military surplus store. It looks like a civilian. In fact, I modeled it off of like the Lululemon version of this because I wanted it to be a little bit more discreet. But I also wanted it to fit life-saving gear and equipment like tourniquets. This is blue. This is part of our training kit. But I want you guys to not just focus on everyday carry pistols. It's important to have security. Security is paramount. I think security is the number one principle that I learned in the infantry and the military that you should adopt as a civilian, but I also think you should take first aid serious. So don't not do first aid training. Tactical Combat Casualty Care, there's a lot of good resources for it. TacMed Solutions, all over the country, there are people who train EMT, EMS professionals. You can get your EMT certification on your own. You could take a Stop the Bleed course with us. Whatever it is, hit your local Stop the Bleed training and get that training because it's important. And carry a tourniquet on your person at all times. It could save your life. Guys, I appreciate you. Until next time, peace out.